I think it's important to understand that you're not lazy. And I don't mean that in the sense that there aren't times that you can act in a way that is lazy, but I mean in the sense that you are what you think you are. You are how you think other people think you are as well. So it's really about understanding that everything that we do, every action that we take, is a direct result of the identity that we attach to ourselves. It's directly a result of not only how we see ourselves, but how we imagine ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, and how we imagine other people think that we are. So in saying that you're not lazy, I don't necessarily mean in the sense that you can you don't necessarily have traits that can exhibit laziness. But I really mean it in the sense that you're not lazy because you take actions that are lazy. You're lazy because you think you are. So it's really about recognizing how much power we have over the actions that we take. I think so often we almost look at these different like motivational videos and we think that being lazy is almost just something that you could almost grind out of. It's something you could work out of. But I don't think it's possible to outwork who you think you are. I don't think it's possible to outwork your identity. I think it's really about rather than trying to change the external so that the internal changes, it's about changing the internal so the external changes. Because the external is not something that we can ultimately control. The only thing that we can control fully is the internal. So it's really about shifting your own sense of identity, shifting who you think you are into someone that's not lazy, into someone that is productive, and existing in that. And in doing so, you're not necessarily forcing yourself to then be a productive person. You then are just a productive person. It's in the sense that, or the way I like to think about it is like breathing. We're not someone that, or at least people, and considering you don't have different health conditions, so the majority of people at least, you don't necessarily have to force yourself to breathe. You don't necessarily have to force yourself to think. It's just something that is a part of who you are. It's a part of who you do. And if you think about it, it's a bunch of different actions we do as well, like brushing our teeth or taking a shower. It's not something that we have to force ourselves to do. It's just something that we do. And that's because it's attached to our identity. It's attached to who we think that we are. And I think that so often when we look at how we build these habits, we try to see that, oh, it's something that we did so often that it became a part of who we are. But I think that the opposite can also 100% be true. And I think the opposite is more effective as well, in the sense that you substantiate that identity first. You substantiate that being a part of who you are. And then you just naturally start exhibiting actions that align with that. So I think it's really important to recognize that you're not lazy. You're lazy because you think you are. So I think that it's important that you almost shift your sense of identity. But it's important to recognize that in doing that, you're not necessarily just saying, "Oh, I'm not lazy. I'm not lazy. I'm not lazy," and things like that. But really, it's about understanding what not being lazy actually is and embodying that rather than just saying it to yourself. So it's really to a point that you're believing it. And I think that to an extent, we already know what a person who is productive would do. So it's really about embodying being a productive person, thinking how a productive person would think. And then you just naturally start exhibiting those actions. And then you just naturally stop exhibiting what laziness is. Last point, but I also just think it's important. Even the way that I worded the title of this video is a bit contrasting to what I'm about to say. But I also think it's important that we focus on the positive more than the negative. And I mean that in the sense that we shouldn't focus on what we're not, but we should focus on what we are. So instead of saying that you're not lazy, you're not lazy, I think that that can almost give energy to laziness. In the same way that if you tell someone to not think of an elephant, then they're going to start thinking of an elephant. So I think that in saying that you're not lazy, you could almost be reinforcing that laziness as even being a possibility of who you are. So instead of saying that you're not lazy, I think it's important, or even not just laziness, but instead of saying you're not and then a bad trait, I think it's important to substantiate that you are a good trait, because you can't replace something with nothing. So it's not necessarily that you're replacing being lazy with being not lazy, but rather you're almost ignoring laziness as a whole, and you're rather substantiating something new. You're rather substantiating something positive in your day-to-day life. I have a Bible verse that goes with this topic pretty well. It's taken from Proverbs 4, verse 23. And it says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." So I think that in the context of this video, at least, the heart is, or at least in the context of the verse, the heart's supposed to represent many different things. But I think one of the main things it represents is how we think, how we see ourselves, how we see the world, and especially how we see the spirit world and how we see God. So it's really about seeing how all the things that can influence us, we need to be important and we need to be diligent and almost making sure that we're only inputting the right things. And I think that we ourselves can be an input to our own thoughts. So it's really about substantiating positive thoughts. And then, like the verse says, for everything you do flows from it. So then everything that you do, all the actions that you take, will then naturally flow as a result of the inputs that you allow yourselves to take. So I think it's important that you just recognize that you are who you think you are, and it more than who you think you are who you embody, you are who you feel you are. So it's really just about substantiating the feeling of someone better, the feeling of someone positive, the feeling of someone productive, the feeling of someone with any trait that you want to have. And in doing so, you almost recognize and you almost substantiate those actions naturally happening and not being something that you have to force yourself to do. I hope you took something from the video. This is just a topic. I mean, I've thought about this a lot before, but I've never really made like a full video on it. So yeah, thank you for watching.